That was truly amazing. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. And with that, we are coming to our final conversation for the day. So we'll have two returning guests to Texylvania. So our next conversation will be moderated by Rohan Chandran, and he is the Chief Product Officer at Data Axle, leading a 600 people plus team across product technology and data operation. And Rohan has been a product leader that I personally look up to for inspiration ever since we both worked at executive roles at Telenav. And besides him being a senior tech executive, he's been an embodiment of startup culture, even in larger enterprises. So I have learned quite a few tricks and hacks from him, how to A/B test, how to design and build beautiful products. And some of you might remember him from his famous product talks at previous editions of Texylvania. And today he's going to have a conversation with famous VC Tim Draper about the changing nature of VC given COVID and how the next few years are going to look like. Please welcome Tim and Rohan.
Great, thanks for having us. I appreciate being a part of Texylvania, even though I don't get to go to Cluj to get my tour of the salt mine or the trip to visit Dracula's castle. I really enjoyed my last time in Texylvania, and I'm thrilled to still be able to at least participate somehow. So Rohan, you had some questions for me?
Yep, we'll dive right in, but yeah, just hello Texylvania as well. It's great to be back, albeit virtually this time, and hoping to be back in Cluj a year from now if things settle down. And on that note, to dive right in, Tim, we certainly live in some pretty fascinating times at this point, socially, economically, politically, and I think the history lessons of the future will have a big chapter on 2020. How have you personally approached and dealt with the change and the tumult that's going on right now?
Well, personally, I have about 10 Zoom calls a day, but I found that my team was starting to lose their reason to be. Why are we doing what we're doing? And so we now meet in person about once a week and kind of go over what our plans are for the week, and then we go back into our isolation. You know, I think this has really been a wild, crazy year where everything seems upside down. As one of my friends described, going into the when you get interviewed by the press, he said, "You're ready to go into the fun house." I kind of feel like we're going into the fun house where nothing is what it seems. You know, people say, "Oh, you got to wear a mask," and then they say, "Well, you got herd immunity, so why would you don't want to wear a mask?" And then they say you've got you know, we need to be global, and then they say, "No, we're nationalistic," and then they say we're you know, we're shutting down all the schools, and then they're saying, wait a second, we've got to educate everybody. And then they're saying defund the police, and then and at the same time they're saying our police are really important because we're having riots in the streets. So like in California here, we've had fires, we've had COVID, we've had riots. It's been, we're waiting for locusts. We think that the world, you know, it's one of those messages from above. But
that's right.
But the way I'm looking at it is, if all those people lost their job, I have to work twice as hard to support the people that that I work with, so that we can, in effect, feed everybody. I just heard that where, you know, all of these reactions to COVID may have saved like 10,000 lives. 135 million lives are going. 135 million people are going to starve because of the lockdown. So beware, you know, politicians, beware of your little changes in policy and how they might affect all these other people around the world. supply chains, all sorts of things have been shut off. And so we're expecting the worst and hoping for the best.
No, I think
But
you're absolutely right.
entrepreneurs, you guys, the entrepreneurs of the world, you're going to take us out of this, take us to the new renaissance, and the world's going to be better because of it. So keep doing what you're doing.
So on that last note, and you've sort of aptly described the constraints and the conflicting constraints we're all dealing with, and the information changes all the time. But I think, constraint fundamentally, or scarcity of resources, is a big driver of innovation in any walk of life. So given that, I think you can imagine that in this, I'll call it a micro era that we're in right now, it should carry a silver lining of being a real technology accelerator. Do you subscribe to that notion that there is arguably increased opportunity in front of us right now to go out and make a difference?
Yeah, as an entrepreneur, the sky's the limit. You have no limit to the skies now that we have rockets going up there. But this is one of those really interesting times. I'll start with our own portfolio. Our own portfolio has accelerated. Some companies were not successful because they were tied to travel or restaurants or something. But
right.
The ones that have been there all of a sudden got accelerated. So anything tied to Bitcoin, people are sort of going, hey, I'm stuck in place. I might as well get myself a Bitcoin wallet. And that is starting to grow. And in addition, the government's printing all that money have made it so that people have less confidence in their government currency and more confidence in Bitcoin, something that has only 21 million of them out there in the world. And so companies like Coinbase and Ledger are doing incredibly well in this environment. Tezos doing very well in this environment. Aragon doing very well in this environment, because people are kind of going, well, I'm not sure I have the same kind of confidence in the government that I used to have. Now it's time for a new currency. And that is, and some governments are saying, hey, let's make Bitcoin a national currency. And that is helping those governments show the world that they are a place to go for entrepreneurs. That has also, the other things that have accelerated are remote healthcare and data-driven healthcare. We have companies that are focused on data for diagnosing a patient, and the data actually does a better job than the doctor, and when combined with a doctor, does even better. And then in therapeutics, the healthcare is now moving from the wet lab to the dry lab. They're moving from putting all these chemistry experiments together and trying them into people to going and looking at the disease on a computer screen and running all the off-patent drugs against it and seeing if there's a fit. And that turns out one of our companies, Verge Genomics, determined that they found a drug that is 25 more times effective against COVID than remdesivir. So,
okay.
So then they're going to get that through FDA, and we're going to have a drug that just like hopefully just eliminates the COVID. And so that's changed. And then the other things that have changed are some governments, the best of governments, are staying global through this time, while others are going back to tribal, where they're kind of going and they're saying we got to be nationalistic and all that. The global ones are going to come out very well 10, 20 years from now, and the tribal ones are not going to do well. So we're seeing that, and that's in our portfolio. We're seeing more companies that are creating new forms of insurance, new ways to govern, new, more efficient ways to treat people fairly and equally from the standpoint of regulation. It's a good, this is so it's been good for those companies too. And I guess that's pretty much, well, the ones that are very capital intensive always have trouble raising money. But I think people are thinking, let's get through this and then let's see what the future looks like. So they're going to have very open minds to the idea of like flying cars or
Right.
you know, surveillance driven insurance or healthcare, you know, robot surgeons or whatever.
Right.
People are going to have much more open minds now, I think, when we come out of this, and hopefully we'll get back to global like that. This tribalism isn't good for anybody.
Yeah,
Actually,
that's a thread I want to pick up on, because I think that's a massive concern I have. I think human history has told us that, you know, technology and the expansion of the human purview have been connected, right from going to the next cave, to the next village, the next landmass. The internet brought us not just connected globally, but functioning and operating globally. And now we're talking about detecting life on Venus and setting up on Mars. And then all of a sudden, we've got a bunch of governments almost trying to go back to the old insular nation state construct and embrace protectionism. Is this fundamentally going to stifle the human creativity and the endeavor that, you know, thrives on the openness? And how do we counter that?
The countries that are going back to tribal, hopefully they're doing that just for the COVID and they're going to be done with it when we get the vaccine. But if they're doing it thinking the xenophobia thing,
Right.
creating trade wars and borders and that kind of thing, border walls and that kind of thing, I think they are hurting their country. They're hurting the people in their country. Let me kind of go through it this way. I'm going to describe liquidity in a very simple way. If you have a farm and I have a house, we don't do business together. I die of starvation and you die of exposure. We need trade to happen because we're all interconnected in some way. We're all supporting each other in some way to keep everybody fed, clothed, and sheltered. And go beyond that, we're getting more communication so that we can identify problems like global warming that the world all needs to know about, or COVID and that world all needs to know about. I think that we need each other badly, and tribalism went away with the internet. It was important at the beginning where we drew the line. We said, you don't go over this line, I don't go over this line, and we don't have to have a war. And so once that's there, good. We've set up our tribes. Your tribe's over here, mine's over here. That was fine for years and years and years. But now we start trading across tribes and we say, oh, well, we're both better off because you guys had fire and we invented the wheel. And then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and more inventions. And now, I mean, we've got 4 to 5 billion people that have access to a smartphone, which means they all have access to all the information around the world. So they can invent from there. So we, in effect, have 4 to 5 billion out of the 8 billion people, 4 to 5 billion who can actually be entrepreneurs. They can invent, they can drive us forward. And we want to be able to trade with all of them, because if one of them comes up with a way of doing teleportation, we're going to want to be on board with that. If one of them comes up with a cure for ALS or cancer, we're going to want to be on board with that. And and so I think it's important for the world to recognize how important first the connection, the global connection is, but also how important capitalism is, how important it is to have a business environment, free market environment, so that people can do that trading. I mean, all you have to do is go to North Korea and South Korea, and you know that you don't want a socialist dictator, period. You do want a free market. And South Korea, I mean, the difference in per person, per capita is so extraordinary that the people in North Korea are actually now shorter than the people in South Korea because they've got a better life.
Right.
The same thing was true in East versus Western Europe. Eastern Europe made business illegal for all those years, and they suffered. And the environment suffered, and people didn't have the same kind of life they did in Western Europe. And same thing was true. And Russia and China did it way back, you know, when it was Soviet Empire and the Chinese Communist government. They kept their people down. And
Right.
meanwhile, the US, with its free market and capitalism, it grew. And when I hear people talking about, oh, we need socialism, I don't think they know what they're talking about. I think they have certainly haven't had a history lesson, because it never works. Because what they're really saying is, I want the government to decide what I should be doing. Instead, I mean, most of us want the freedom to do the thing that we know is best for us, our families, our communities, and our countries, and our world. So anyway, that's my message.
Yep.
You know, that's the big, strong message. And one more very important one. Sorry, I'm not giving you a chance to ask questions. Trust is the most important thing in any economy. And here's my example. If you show me a trustful society, I'll show you a wealthy society. Singapore, super trustworthy, trusting, and they have gone from nothing, $100 per capita, to something like one of the top 3 or 4 countries in the world in a per capita income. And meanwhile, you go to other places where there isn't much trust, parts of Africa, India, and you see a very poor country. So trust really drives it, and that comes often from the top. If the leader is trustworthy, if the leader sticks to their word and they expect that of their people, it spreads very well. And if the leader's corrupt, it also spreads very badly.
I think that's a great insight. It holds true in the corporate environment, in any startup, in any bigger company. Trust is at the center of all that. It's interesting. This is not the direction I anticipated the conversation going, but I want to tie.
I've got wealthy by trusting people. I give money away.
That's a key part of your role.
For some weird amorphous thing called equity in their business. And,
that's right.
And it's worked very well for me and a lot of other venture capitalists.
Yep. I might want to come back to that actually, but I do want to pick up on, you mentioned the company Aragon, which I've paid a little attention to. I believe you're an investor there as well. And in the context of what we're talking,
I don't think there is a company there. I think there's just a token and some really good engineers behind the token. Yeah.
Got it. And what's interesting in the context of government and trust and everything that you've just talked about is one of the notions they've advanced that I've sort of read about a bit is that notion of liquid democracy. And in a post-COVID world where, you know, we've got potentially representative democracy floundering and misaligned incentives and all of that, I look at that and the question I have is, you know, we've looked at technology as an enabler of, you know, the socio-political environment, but can technology actually be at the heart of that revolution that we need in order to change things and evolve it and be that integral to it?
Yeah, I actually think it's interesting. Technology always leads, and then regulations catch up. And so technology can show us a new way of doing something. And they didn't have the tech when they created America. They didn't have the technology to do a liquid democracy, so they had to do physical voting technology to create their democracy and create their representation. Now we have a lot of information. Everybody's got access to a lot of information, and they all have good opinions on whatever it is that would work for them. their people and their country and their world. And there are other people they know who feel sort of the same way. Well, then they can offer up their liquid democracy votes to that person, and then that person can aggregate other people, and they can start building a reputation as the place to put their liquid democracy, the place to have the influence. So it could be many, many branches leading up to someone who actually votes to decide on, you name it, marijuana legalization or the pro-choice, pro-life, or whatever. You can figure out where you stand on all these issues, and you can find the person to vote that issue for you. And then you don't have to worry about it because you know that that person's doing it. And we don't have this monopoly, duopoly that we have now, which at least in the US, where our representatives are not representative of us. They are just big brands that have built themselves over the years. And now, I mean, they're 70, 80 years old in the Senate and in the Congress. They're pretty old too. And they don't have any idea. I mean, they asked Mark Zuckerberg, how does Facebook money? I mean, they are so far removed. They are not my representatives, whether I voted for them or not. They don't represent me, and they're starting to represent themselves at the expense of their constituents. And that's where we really do need a new form of democracy. And this Aragon is taking that first step, and they're starting with just a remote jury. And boy, a remote jury makes your life so much better. I don't know if you've ever been in a jury. I haven't, but I've had to wait in the cell, in the basement, for an entire day for them to decide whether or not they needed me. Total waste of a day. I wasn't allowed to bring in a computer or a phone or anything. And so I'm sitting there, like looking at the walls, trying to strike up conversation with people who really don't want to do anything.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So
There's a whole
not a healthy, that system is not working. And I think Aragon is the first step toward a really good working system. And it doesn't just happen in the US, it's going to happen all over the world. Probably happen in some smaller countries first.
Right. So it's,
and I think the excitement around Aragon is recognizing that people no longer believe that they are well represented in their country.
Right. And I'm just excited to see technology not just give me a better fitness monitor, but actually change the world at that level as well. It's listening to you, it's so clear that you have clarity of perspective and a coherent thesis as how you approach things. What's your take on how your industry?
I've traveled a lot. I've met people from all over the world, top to the bottom, all sides. And so it helps to have lived a long and very active life.
What's your take on how absolutely. What's your take on how the industry as a whole, the VC industry, has reacted or maybe even not reacted to the transformation our world is undergoing right now? Should the industry be thinking differently?
I doubled my workload because I knew that if there were a lot of people that were unemployed, I wanted to work twice as hard. And so that I could really kind of have an impact. I also felt like when you have an event, whether it's tragic or comic, an event always sets a new playing field for the entrepreneur. And so it ends up being, those are the times when it's the most important for me to work the hardest. And so, so that's what I've been doing. I have noticed that a lot of the venture guys have kind of taken a very long vacation. I don't see them much on Zoom calls. I don't see them out fighting for deals. So that's been, and I feel like that may be a problem for entrepreneurs getting their money now. We've certainly been the only game in town for the seed investment for a lot of entrepreneurs. They come to us and with no other alternative. That's too bad, because I think they should. I mean, there's so many venture capitalists in the world. What are they all doing?
So that presents an interesting challenge, right? Because if you accept that we're in, at best, a dodgy economic situation, you know, you reference the money printing switch just being set to on right now, which is insanity on a whole nother level. But if you take the fundamental premise that I think is widely accepted, right, that economic growth comes through entrepreneurship and fundamentally enabling the little guys, right? It's not, and no disrespect intended, it's not Microsoft that's going to transform our economy. It's all the little guys bringing new things to it. Does this speak to a VC model?
Those are all the net new jobs too.
That's right.
Net new jobs. The big companies don't create a lot of new jobs. They are net.
That's exactly
neutral.
Right. So is there an argument to be made here that the VC model should evolve? You know, when we met in Romania 5 years ago, against all odds, in my mind, you were the person who sold me on considering seriously the notion of universal basic income. It's something I'd sort of poo-pooed off prior to conversing with you. Is there a model of that form for venture capitalism to really fuel activity as UBI is intended to do on that broad global scale versus the sort of cherry pick deals?
No, venture capital can fund new tokens that could potentially be universal. I like Brock Pierce. He's my presidential candidate.
Okay.
Brock Pierce. And hopefully he wins 1 or 2 states, and then it goes to Congress and the game, who knows what could happen. He called it universal earned income. And what that means is you're going to get this, and ideally it starts out as a token that's worth nothing, and then people start trading it, and then it's worth something, and then hopefully it'll end up being worth enough for people to maybe pay for some food or some shelter or whatever. I think that's the only way you can really politically get it done. Otherwise, it's too costly and maybe doesn't end up working out. I like that it's universal. I like the idea of something that's the same for everybody, rich or poor, everybody gets it. And the amount that they get will increase when the economy increases. As the economy increases, I think those are 2 really important things, because then people look at Bill Gates and Larry Ellison and Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos, and they say, thank you. Not only are you making it so that I can get anything, anywhere, anytime, and right away, and it just keeps getting better and better, but you have also put a lot of money into the system. That some of that money comes down to my universal basic income or universal earned income. Earned is it's a good thing, because it's like I'm earning it by being a good citizen. You know, it's that kind of, I'm earning it by helping others, and that's how you get you show love, you show a better way of doing something. You help somebody just for the good of it, and that's how you earn your universal earned income. So I kind of like that, because universal basic income sends a message that, hey, you know, a culture of need. Well, we need more, you know, instead of a culture of opportunity where it's like, okay, your basic needs are taken care of. Let's see what you can do from here. Let's see how great your world can be starting from here. And I think that will encourage a lot more entrepreneurship. I think entrepreneurs who know that at least they've got a little money for food and they can live in a tent and whatever, they'll feel like, hey, my downside's protected. The sky's the limit now. I can do whatever I need to do. And and it reminds me that the U.S. has a really good bankruptcy law, and it's a similar kind of thing, because if you have a bankruptcy law, your downside is protected. It's not like you're going to be in debt forever and your children will be in debt and their children will be in debt if you try something new. Having a bankruptcy protection law actually really does help encourage entrepreneurs to go out and try it.
Yep, no, that makes a lot of sense. I like the notion of not providing a crutch for people, but creating opportunity for them to go out and do more. And on that note, I'm sure one of the things you're always looking for in founders is people who, are not going to play it safe. You don't win by playing it safe, right? You win by putting a challenge in front of you and going after that and being willing to fail in that. And that fear of failure is a problem. So how do you deal with that? So, we've had examples like the Theranos story. I don't want to dissect that, but we live in an era right now which is rife with mistrust and public skepticism of big tech. How do you encourage a founder to really push forward and take those big risks, yet walk the right, ethical, moralistic boundaries without then constraining themselves and not being aggressive enough? I mean, that's a tough line.
Yeah, at Draper University, we say, I will fail and fail again until I succeed. And by the way, I recommend now we've got an online program that's 2 weeks and sort of no excuse not to do it. It's a great system for putting a true entrepreneur's head into you. Right. And that's what we do. Anybody can do the here is how a Series A works or whatever, but what we do is we put that sense of what are you going to do with your life, make it great into you, and go ahead and be willing to take a risk. And it is true, it's going to be the most aggressive, the most driven, but also the most loving of the customer that wins. So actually, in that world, that's who wins. I mean, the right. People who win are the ones who say, I want to delight my customer. Facebook was just better than MySpace. They made it better. The Amazon was just better than all those other e-tailers that were created at the same right. time. They created a better experience, a better service, and they kept at it. If a company is just aggressive and doesn't have the love of the customer, they're going to die. So we humans are all better off allowing these guys to just go for it and not put our moralistic view on it, because right. You can put your view on it as a customer. I'll be a customer of this one because I like what they're doing. And then when companies super big, sometimes they lose their way, and sometimes there's a lot of schadenfreude. There's envy, and it comes right. after them. And that's what I think happened, where the government said this guy at Facebook's more powerful than we are. And of course, they're just a bunch of people that are representing us. They're not right. powerful, but right. But they're making they're feeling like this is some sort of threat to their existence, and so they go and they try to take them down or do whatever. And that's only after they become very big companies. And when they become very big companies, they get there because they've provided an amazing service, and Facebook's an amazing service, and so is DoorDash, and so is the Amazon. My God, Amazon's a fantastic service.
Yeah, I think as you're describing,
Apple,
history is.
My God, Apple's still kind of living off the genius of Steve Jobs. Thank you, right. Steve Jobs. This is awesome.
That's right.
I mean, my phone 3 and my phone 11 are pretty much the same thing. So they haven't really innovated much. They have continued his legacy, and wow,
Yeah.
what they've done for the world. I mean, that so much is in this, what I call my utility belt, the Apple
Right.
iPhone. It's a great service. So, you know, I guess they haven't been picking on Apple and Google as much as they've been picking on Facebook, because Facebook has a central figure who created the business, and they're looking.
Yeah, there's a lot of political discussion we could certainly have around that, and I think your examples are great of companies that focused on really solving for the customer, because the people will go where the solution actually meets their needs.
Yeah, and then I think people should be saying thank you, Jeff Bezos. Thank you, Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, they have done amazing things for us, and we've appreciated it. We've made them a part of our lives.
I mean, the billion people logging into Facebook every day answers what people think of it at that fundamental level. One of the things you've always said around that is that it's really important for entrepreneurs to actually focus on making money, because that's what enables scale and possibility. It's an interesting time for us in Silicon Valley with the Snowflake IPO last week, and that's triggered a whole lot of discussion about IPOs, and they're getting slammed as it's just the rich getting richer, and the money actually gets taken off the table and doesn't fuel the scale and possibility. What's your take on the IPO in this and the forthcoming era, and just the public market as a fundraising and value generating vehicle? Should that still be the intent and aim of every entrepreneur, or is there a different way to go about it?
Yeah, how companies get valued is based on their earnings and their long-term prospects, and so that's going to come and go. And a lot of people made a lot of money. My dad's old firm, Sutter Hill, was an investor in Snowflake, so good, more power to them. I actually think that if you are starting a business and you somehow don't think that you are supposed to make money, you are not going to be successful.
Right.
If you're starting a business and you realize that in order for this business to succeed, you need customers willing to pay for those products, and you go out and make money, you have a shot. You can become what you hope to become. And it's all about whether the customer is willing to pay for it, and you're able to create the product or service at a low enough cost. And you're going to have competition. Almost no matter what you do, you'll have competition. So you better delight the customer more than the other guy. And you better make it so that you're making more money than the other guy. Because if you're not making more money, you will not expand as quickly, your product will not grow as quickly, and your customers won't be as happy with you. So go make money. I mean, go make money. You're an entrepreneur. You're supposed to go make money. And if you do, and you're hugely successful, and the press starts picking on you, whatever, just take it in your heart and say, hey, I was successful. It worked. And if it didn't work, if it doesn't work, you're an entrepreneur and it doesn't work, just take pride in the fact that you actually push the ball forward. You made everybody better off. You encouraged a competitor to do better. You found some customers that found you where you improved their lives. I think every entrepreneur who's successful, it becomes sometimes too clear that they became successful. And when they're unsuccessful, I think they think they're total failures. That's not the case. Entrepreneurs, they all push the ball along. They all make the world better. And so I appreciate all of them. I've written songs about them. Entrepreneurs, you guys, you make the world go around, and we appreciate it. And if you want to be a great entrepreneur, you got to make money. Even if you're a nonprofit entrepreneur, you got to make money. Nonprofit, for-profit, NGO, doesn't matter. You've got to make money so that you can then spread the good word of whatever it is, the service is that you're creating. And that's a very, I see it over and over. People come in and say, "Oh, we don't need to make money."
Yeah. I
And
think there's an
it's
important
wrong. Then they end
distinction
up
there.
on the street. They didn't make money.
That's right.
They're on the street
Yeah,
begging
no,
for money.
there's
Then
an
they
important
become
distinction
pure
there for.
capitalists.
Sorry. That's exactly right. I think the important distinction there is
Oh, one other
between
thing.
making
You were
money for
talking,
the. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
one other thing, you were talking about how, what about Facebook misusing the data or whatever. Well, what's great about entrepreneurship is that you get entrepreneurs like Data Wallet who go and say, you get to control your own data.
Yep.
And you can sell it to Microsoft and to Facebook and to whoever, and then you control it. And so when there is a great entrepreneur and he's created a big business, he or she, big business, it's become hugely successful, and then there's the press and people trying to pick on it for one thing or another. Well, those things all become entrepreneurial opportunities. So keep that in mind, that another entrepreneur will come along and provide a better service with less use of your data and more, better user experience, and they will win.
No, and that's a great point, because there's a whole ecosystem that spawns out of that, and it becomes a self-fulfilling cycle. So you mentioned the NGOs and non-profits. Social impact investing is sort of very much de rigueur. Everyone's talking about it. Global health has been a big deal. Bill Gates is very visible.
I've been doing social impact investing all along. I mean, I've been doing investing, and it's been great for society. We created, Hotmail, my God, that was great for the environment because everybody is able to send free emails without any gas or cutting down trees or writing it on a postcard or whatever. And then Skype, same thing. It ended up being one of the great things for the world, and not, it was less travel and great for the world. Tesla, it's going to be a great thing for the world. We use less hydrocarbons to move around. SpaceX is going to get us off the planet. I mean, they're all big social events. At the time, they were probably very controversial. Most of them were. The idea of an electric car,
right.
If that wasn't a golf cart or whatever, it was ridiculous. The idea of taking NASA private, taking the space race,
SpaceX. Yep.
that was crazy. And those things worked. And the idea of giving away free email, web-based email, was, that was a crazy idea. Nobody had really thought of.
And these are the dreams people need to keep having to really change the world.
If you start putting something somebody said in the press on you to try to make you think differently about your business, if it's not improving the experience for the customer, ignore it. Don't let the press put all this moral burden on you while you're trying to make something really extraordinary happen, because they are the morality of right now. They are not the morality of 5 to 10 years from now. And you, as an entrepreneur, need to drive the morality of 5 to 10 years from now.
I think that's a great message for us all, to keep thinking about what's next and in the future, and anchor in that future rather than in the past or present. So just to finish up, as I think we're butting up against time, a personal question to finish up. What's the, you're unlikely in my mind to retire or step back until at least Bitcoin reaches 250,000. I know that's next on your horizon, but what's the legacy that you're looking?
Oh, go ahead. You can finish the question.
What's the legacy that you want to leave, that you want to, assuming you don't invest in a company that solves immortality, what do you want said on that epitaph about what Tim Draper bequeathed the world?
Well, my mission way back when was to spread entrepreneurship and venture capital around the world. That's done. But what happened was, and so I was thinking, oh, good, well, I've had a good life, everything's great.
Right.
And all of a sudden, this decentralized web started to happen, and governments started to be nationalistic. And I realized that my mission is now to globalize and spread good value around the world. And that as soon as Bitcoin came and other cryptocurrencies, I realized that there's a whole new mission here.
Yeah.
We now have, where the internet was a big opportunity to globalize and make everything work that way. Well, now with Bitcoin, the blockchain, smart contracts, artificial intelligence, surveillance, all these technologies combined can completely transform insurance. And what is government, but like 80% of it is insurance. Transform banking, transform real estate, transform the biggest industries in the world, healthcare. They're all going to be transformed by these new technologies. I want to make sure that I'm driving for that.
Fantastic.
And that's where I don't think I mean, now I've seen it. I've seen that future. It's a great future. Yeah. And there's no way I can retire.
Well,
ever until that's all happened. And that could be years. I don't expect to outlive that. That needs to, I need to, drive it all the way and pin it.
It's brilliant to hear. As a British Indian who grew up in Singapore and Hong Kong, lives in California, married to an Australian, I can get behind that global mission very confidently. So I love it. I think that's where we need to be. Well, we're actually past time. Just want to say thanks so much, Tim. Really appreciate your insight, candor, and your tolerance of a highly inexperienced interviewer as well. I think it's been a great session for everyone.
You let me roll.
Thanks. That's what it's about.
You got me going, you let me roll. That's all you need to do as an interview.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much.
All right. Great job, Rohan. Thank you. Right. And send me a link to this interview.
Yep. Philip, I'm sure you can take care of that.
Thank you very much, Rohan and Tim. This was fantastic. Super high energy, and Tim, we're absolutely making sure.
So I can
we absolutely will.
Crew. Perfect. Thanks for having me. All the best at Pennsylvania.
All right.
Thank you, Tim. Bye-bye.